3 days passed. Jocelyn maintained her routine with clockwork precision. Morning coffee, Maisie's breakfast, emails in her office, lunch, more emails, dinner preparation. She smiled at the right moments, asked about his day, helped Maisie with homework, but she didn't touch him. Didn't sit close during Maisie's bedtime story. Didn't kiss him goodnight. And the calls continued. "I think we should refinance the house," she said over breakfast Wednesday morning. "Interest rates dropped. We could save thousands." Calder buttered his toast slowly. "We refinanced 2 years ago. That was different. This is a better opportunity." She slid papers across the table. Already contacted 3 lenders. Got preliminary quotes. The paperwork was thorough, professional. She'd been planning this for weeks. "I'll review it," he said. "They need an answer by Friday. Market conditions won't hold forever." Maisie looked up from her cereal. "What's refinance?" "It's when adults make boring decisions about money," Jocelyn said, ruffling their daughter's hair. "Nothing for you to worry about." But Calder caught the look in Maisie's eyes. 8 years old, but already sensing the tension her parents pretended didn't exist. After Jocelyn left for a client meeting, Calder called Grady. "I need to see you," he said. "Today." Grady's office occupied the top floor of a downtown building, windows overlooking the Boise River. He was younger than Calder by 3 years, but he'd built a reputation for handling complex divorces with surgical precision. "You sounded stressed on the phone," Grady said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "What's going on?" Calder told him everything. The Hawaii trip, the deleted emails, the refinancing pressure. Grady listened without interruption, taking notes on a legal pad. "The international custody transfer inquiry is concerning," Grady said when Calder finished. "Combined with the bank account attempts, it suggests flight planning." "What can I do?" "Legally? Nothing yet. She hasn't broken any laws. But you need to understand something." Grady leaned forward. "In custody cases, preparation wins. Evidence wins. The parent who moves first, moves smart, usually gets what they want. She's planning to take Maisie. That's my assessment. The question is when." Grady flipped to a fresh page. "You have one advantage. She doesn't know you're aware. But you have to be strategic. No emotional reactions. No confrontations until you have complete leverage." "What kind of leverage?" "Proof of adultery. Financial misconduct. Evidence she's an unfit parent or a flight risk." Grady set down his pen. "You get one shot at this, Calder. If you move too early, she'll disappear with your daughter. If you move too late, she's already gone." Calder drove home through Boise's afternoon traffic, Grady's words echoing in his mind. One shot. Complete leverage that he'd built his career on structural analysis. Finding weak points. Calculating load-bearing capacity. Determining exactly how much pressure a system could handle before collapse. Now he needed to apply those same principles to his marriage. When he got home, Jocelyn was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She smiled when he walked in, the same practiced expression she'd worn for days. "How was your day?" she asked. "Fine. Yours?" "Good." The client signed off on the final designs. She stirred something in a pot, steam rising between them. "Did you have a chance to look at the refinancing papers?" "Still reviewing." Her smile faltered slightly. "It's not that complicated, Calder. We save money, lower our payments." "What's to review?" "I'm thorough. You know that." She turned back to the stove. Sometimes being thorough means missing opportunities. That night, after Maisie went to bed, Calder sat at his office reviewing the backup files. Hidden in Jocelyn's deleted browsing history, he found something new. A series of searches from yesterday. How to establish custody across state lines, international travel with minor child without father's consent, fast estates for divorce proceedings, asset protection during marriage dissolution. She was accelerating her timeline. Calder picked up his phone and scrolled to Nina's contact. His finger hovered over her name. Once he made this call, there would be no going back. No pretending their marriage might survive. No hope for reconciliation. But hope was just another word for denial. And Calder had never been good at lying to himself. He pressed call. Nina McClellan's voice was exactly as Calder remembered, direct, professional, with an edge that suggested she'd seen enough of the world's ugliness to take nothing at face value. "Calder Wyatt. It's been, what, 2 years? Something like that. He stood in his office with the door closed, listening for movement upstairs. Jocelyn had gone to bed an hour ago, but he'd learned not to trust appearances. I need help. What kind of help? The kind you specialized in. Information gathering. The pause lasted 3 seconds. In the military, Nina had been known for reading between lines, for understanding what people needed before they fully explained it. Personal or professional? Personal. Very personal. I'll be there in an hour. She hung up without asking for his address. She would have it within 5 minutes, along with property records, credit reports, and probably a satellite view of his neighborhood. Some habits from the Air Force never faded. Calder made coffee and waited. At 11:47 p.m., his doorbell rang once. Short, quiet, professional. Nina looked exactly as he remembered, except for streaks of gray in her dark hair. She wore jeans and a black jacket, carrying a slim laptop bag that probably contained enough technology to infiltrate a small government. "Your wife's asleep?" she asked, stepping inside. "Yes." "Good. Let's talk." They sat at his kitchen table, voices low. Calder told her everything. The Hawaii trip, the deleted emails, the refinancing pressure, Grady's warnings. Nina listened like she was building a mental file, organizing facts into categories and threat assessments. "You said her boyfriend's name is Deacon?" she asked when he finished. "That's what the email fragment suggested." "Last name?" "I don't know." Nina opened her laptop. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, no wasted motion. "Deacon's not a common name in Boise. Give me a few minutes." While she worked, Calder studied her face. They'd never been romantic. Their friendship had developed during joint cybersecurity training, built on mutual respect and shared military background. But he'd always trusted her judgment more than his own when it came to reading people. "Found him," she said. "Deacon Slade. Owns Platinum Auto Detailing on Fairview. Expensive cars, wealthy clients." She turned the laptop toward him. 41 years old. Divorced. No kids. The photo showed a man with practiced charm, expensive haircut, white teeth, the kind of confidence that came from selling things to people who didn't need them. "There's more," Nina said. "Sealed arrest record in Nevada from 2019. Fraud charges, but he took a plea deal. Officially, his record's clean." "How did you?" "Don't ask questions you don't want answered." She closed that window and opened another. "I need access to your wife's devices. Phone, computer, cloud accounts. Can you give me your passwords?" "She uses the same password for everything. Our anniversary, plus Maisie's birth year." "Predictable. Most people are." Nina's fingers flew across the keyboard again. "I'm going to run a forensic sweep. Map her digital footprint for the past 6 months. It'll take a few hours." The Pacific breeze carried salt and the sound of children playing in the distance. Calder Wyatt stood on the hotel balcony, watching Maisie build sandcastles on the beach below. The Kauai sunset painted everything gold, but his attention fixed on his wife's voice drifting through the sliding door. "No, I told you already. The meeting has to wait until I get back." Jocelyn's tone was sharper than necessary for a work call. "I can't discuss the details right now." This was the 4th call today. Yesterday, there had been 6. Calder stepped back inside their suite. Jocelyn sat cross-legged on the bed, phone pressed to her ear, fingers drumming against her thigh. "Who was that?" he asked when she hung up. "Client. The Peterson Project." She didn't look up from her phone as she typed. "You know how demanding they are." Calder knew the Peterson Project had been completed 2 months ago. "Dad!" Maisie burst through the door, sand coating her legs and arms. "Look what I found." She held up a smooth black stone, eyes bright with excitement. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Calder knelt to examine the stone. "Where did you find it?" "By the rocks. There's a tide pool with tiny fish. Can we go look?" "After dinner." He glanced at Jocelyn, who was typing again. "Your mom needs to finish her call." "I'm done." Jocelyn's smile looked practiced. "Let's go see these fish." The tide pools carved natural windows into another world. Maisie crouched at the water's edge, pointing at darting fish no bigger than her thumbnail. "Take a picture, Dad. The sunset looks amazing from here." Calder raised his phone, framing Maisie against the orange sky. Through the camera, he noticed a figure on their hotel balcony. A man stood close to the railing, his reflection visible in the glass door. Too close to where Jocelyn would be standing if she were inside, that he lowered the phone. Looked up at the balcony with his naked eye. Empty. Did you get it? Maisie asked. Got it. He took the photo. Later, when he examined it closely, he would see the man's silhouette in the reflection. And he would remember that Jocelyn had said she was going upstairs to rest while they explored the beach. We should head back, Calder said. Early flight, tomorrow. Tomorrow. Jocelyn's voice carried from behind them. I thought we weren't leaving until Saturday. Calder turned. His wife stood 10 feet away, cheeks flushed, hair slightly messed despite the lack of wind. Emergency with the Morrison Bridge project. The client called my office. He kept his voice level. Foundation concerns. I need to review the calculations. Jocelyn's jaw tightened. Can it wait? We planned this vacation for months. Not when public safety's involved. Calder scooped Maisie into his arms. Sorry, kiddo. We'll come back soon. The lie came easily. There was no emergency. No client call. But there had been a man on their balcony, and Jocelyn had been upstairs, and her phone had been silent for the past hour. Calder had learned long ago that when something felt wrong, it usually was. Their Boise home felt different when they returned. Nothing had changed. Same furniture, same family photos lining the hallway, same view of the foothills from the kitchen window. But Calder moved through the rooms like a stranger, seeing everything with new eyes. Jocelyn unpacked their suitcases with unusual efficiency, separating clothes into precise piles. She hummed while she worked, a tune he didn't recognize. I'll throw a load in the washer, she said. Then I need to catch up on emails. Calder nodded, carrying Maisie's bag to her room. Their daughter had fallen asleep in the car, exhausted from the early flight and travel. He tucked her into bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. Love you, Dad, she mumbled without opening her eyes. Love you too, sweetheart. The house settled into evening quiet. Jocelyn disappeared into her home office, door clicking shut behind her. Calder waited in the kitchen, listening to the muffled sound of her voice through the walls. Another call. Always another call. He opened his laptop on the dining table. The family computer they both used, passwords shared, accounts linked. He'd always trusted her completely. Trust built from 9 years of marriage, from raising Maisie together, from building a life that looked perfect from the outside. But trust was structural. Remove the wrong support beam, and everything collapsed. The browser history showed normal activity from before their trip news sites, shopping, Maisie's school portal. Nothing unusual. But Calder knew enough about computers to check the deleted files folder. 3 items. All from 5 days ago, while they were in Hawaii, email drafts. The first one made his stomach drop, seeking information about international custody transfer requirements. Child is 8 years old, U.S. citizen. Father is not aware of relocation plans. Urgency appreciated. The second email was to a bank he'd never heard of, requesting expedited account opening for minor child. Will provide documentation upon approval. Account holder will be traveling internationally within 30 days. The third was a partial message, as if she'd started typing and stopped. Deacon, we need to finalize everything before he gets suspicious. The trust fund paperwork is almost ready, and once I transfer, the message cut off there. But it was enough. Calder closed the laptop and walked to the window. Outside, their neighbor Margot Klein tended her garden in the evening light. She waved when she saw him, a smile creasing her weathered face. Normal. Everything looked normal. His phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer friend, Grady Briscoe. How was Hawaii? Call me when you get a chance. Calder stared at the message. Grady didn't send casual texts. They saw each other maybe twice a year, usually at professional events. This felt like more than coincidence that he walked to his home office, the small room next to Jocelyn's where he kept his engineering files and client projects. His desk faced the wall, but he could hear her voice through the shared wall. Still on the phone, still talking to someone she trusted more than her husband. Calder opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small device no bigger than a thumb drive. Nina had given it to him years ago, back when they served together briefly on a cybersecurity consulting board. Insurance, she called it, for backing up important files. He'd never used it, never needed to. He plugged it into his computer, and opened the backup software. Selected Jocelyn's user account. Click Start. The progress bar moves slowly. 47% complete. 52%. 78%. Her voice stopped in the next room. Footsteps approached his door. Calder? What are you doing? He minimized the window just as she knocked. Working. Reviewing the Morrison calculations like I told the client. This late. Bridge foundations don't keep business hours. He opened a random engineering file, filling his screen with structural diagrams. Go to bed. I'll be up soon. Her pause lasted too long. Okay, don't stay up too late. He waited until her footsteps faded, until he heard the bedroom door close upstairs. Then he finished the backup and ejected the drive. Everything she deleted. Every hidden file. Every secret she thought was safe. Now it belonged to him. What are you looking for? Everything. Financial transactions. Communication patterns. Travel searches. Dating apps. People think they can hide online, but digital footprints are like DNA. They tell the whole story if you know how to read them. Nina worked in silence for 20 minutes. Occasionally, she would pause, frown at the screen, then continue. Calder found himself watching her face, trying to interpret her expressions. This is interesting, she said finally. Your wife's been transferring money from her consulting accounts to Slade's business. Small amounts, but regular. 500 here, 800 there. How much total? 12,000 over the past 4 months. Nina highlighted a series of transactions. She's listed them as vehicle maintenance in her bookkeeping, but the amounts don't match typical auto detailing costs. Calder felt something cold settle in his stomach. What else? Encrypted voice memos in her cloud storage. Amateur encryption, but still requires some work to crack. Nina glanced at him. How far do you want me to go with this? All the way. She nodded and returned to the laptop. There's also a pattern in her location data. She's been visiting an address on Emerald Street twice a week for the past month. Property records show it's a rental house. Guess who's on the lease? Deacon. Correct. Nina pulled up a map, red dots marking Jocelyn's phone locations. Always on weekdays. Always when you're at work. Always for 2 to 3 hours. The evidence painted a clear picture. Not just an affair, but a planned deception. Financial transfers. Regular meetings. Encrypted communications. There's something else, Nina said. Travel searches. Your wife's been researching flights to countries with limited extradition treaties. Non-extradition zones for parental abduction. Which countries? Morocco. Thailand. Several in South America. Nina's voice was flat, professional. She's not planning a vacation, Calder. He stood up, walked to the window. Outside, Boise slept peacefully. Street lights illuminated empty sidewalks. Normal families in normal houses, dealing with normal problems. Can you break the encryption on those voice files? Already working on it. Should have results by morning. I need to know what she's planning. Exact timeline, if possible. Nina closed the laptop. I'll have a complete digital profile by tomorrow evening. But Calder. She met his eyes. Based on what I'm seeing, you don't have much time. She's moving faster than you think. After Nina left, Calder sat in his office until dawn, staring at the wall that separated his space from Jocelyn's. Somewhere in that room were more secrets, more lies, more evidence of a life she was building without him. But now he had Nina, and Nina was very good at finding things people try to hide. The next morning arrived with artificial normalcy. Jocelyn made breakfast, kissed Maisie goodbye for school, asked Calder about his schedule. Her performance was flawless, but now he could see the mechanics behind it, the calculated timing, the practiced responses, the way she managed information flow. I have client meetings all day, she said, checking her phone. Might be late tonight. How late? Not sure. The Peterson account is more complicated than expected. Another lie. The Peterson project had ended months ago, but she kept using it as cover. He wondered if she'd forgotten her own deceptions, or if she simply didn't care about consistency anymore. I'll pick up Maisie from school, he said. Thanks. She grabbed her keys and purse. See you tonight. The door closed behind her, and Calder immediately called his office. Janet, I need to reschedule everything today. Emergency situation. His assistant had worked for him for 6 years, long enough to read the tension in his voice. Everything okay? Family matter. I'll handle client calls from home. First stop, his business bank. Calder had incorporated his engineering firm years ago, mostly for tax benefits and liability protection. Now that corporate structure would serve a different purpose. I need to update our account permissions, he told the bank manager. And I want to transfer funds from personal accounts into business operating expenses. The transactions were legal and properly documented. Equipment purchases for the firm, office expansion costs, professional development expenses. Each transfer came with receipts and justification, building a paper trail that would protect Maisie's future while removing assets from potential community property claims. W.Y. Noon. He'd moved 60% of their liquid assets into business accounts with his name alone on the signature cards. Next stop, Grady's office. I need to update my will, Calder said. Immediately. What changes? If something happens to me, I want Nina McClellan as Maisie's temporary guardian, not Jocelyn. Grady frowned. That's unusual. Most couples designate each other as primary guardians. Most couples don't have wives planning international abduction. Calder placed Nina's preliminary report on the desk. Read this. Grady studied the financial records, location data, and communication patterns. His expression grew darker with each page. This is substantial evidence of flight planning, he said finally. We could probably get an emergency custody order based on this alone. Not yet. I want more evidence. Complete evidence. Why wait? Because I want to destroy her legal position entirely. No possibility of appeal or counterclaims. Calder leaned forward. She gets one chance to take my daughter. I want to make sure she never gets a second chance. Grady nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Prepare custody paperwork. Full sole custody with supervised visitation only. Also prepare a restraining order preventing her from taking Maisie out of state. That's aggressive. She's planning to take my daughter to Morocco, Grady. Aggressive is appropriate. The will update took 2 hours. When finished, Jocelyn had no legal authority over Maisie's welfare, no claim to Calder's business assets, and no inheritance rights. Every document was properly witnessed and notarized. There's one more thing, Calder said as they finished. I need the name of a good private investigator, someone who specializes in surveillance. What kind of surveillance? The kind that holds up in court. That evening, Calder cooked dinner for Maisie while Jocelyn remained at her client meeting. His daughter seemed quieter than usual, picking at her food. Are you and Mom fighting? She asked suddenly. Calder set down his fork. Why do you ask? You don't talk to each other anymore. And Mom's on the phone all the time. Maisie's eyes were too serious for an 8-year-old. Are you getting divorced? The question hit him like physical pain. Not because it was unexpected, but because it came from someone who deserved better than the mess adults had made of her world. Your mom and I are having some problems, he said carefully. But whatever happens, it's not your fault. And I'll always be here for you. Well, I have to choose who to live with. No, sweetheart. You'll live with me. What about Mom? Calder chose his words carefully. Your mom might need to go away for a while. But that's not your fault either. Maisie nodded, but her expression remained troubled. She was smart enough to sense the undercurrents, intuitive enough to know that her family was disintegrating around her. After she went to bed, Calder called Margot Klein. I need to ask you a favor, he said when his neighbor answered. Of course. What do you need? If Maisie ever seems scared or upset, if she needs a safe place to stay for a few hours, would you be willing to help? Margot's pause was brief, but telling. Are you expecting trouble? I'm preparing for possibilities. She's always welcome here. You know that. Thank you. Calder? If you need anything else, anything at all, you just call. I raised 3 kids and buried 2 husbands. I know what crisis looks like. When Jocelyn came home at 10:30 p.m., she found him reading in the living room. Sorry I'm so late, she said. Client dinner ran longer than expected. How's the Peterson account? Challenging, but we're making progress. She sat on the opposite end of the couch, maintaining distance even in their own home. I reviewed the refinancing papers, Calder said. I have some concerns. What kind of concerns? The timing seems rushed, and some of the terms aren't in our favor. Jocelyn's jaw tightened slightly. The interest rate is better than what we have now. Marginally. But the closing costs are high, and there are prepayment penalties we don't currently have. So you're saying no? I'm saying I need more time to review. She stood up abruptly. Sometimes I think you use caution as an excuse for inaction, and sometimes I think urgency is used to pressure poor decisions. They stare at each other across the living room. 9 years of marriage reduced to tactical positions and hidden agendas. I'm going to bed, she said finally. I'll be up soon. But Calder stayed downstairs until well past midnight, listening to the house settle around him. Tomorrow, Nina would have the encrypted files decoded. Tomorrow, he would know exactly what his wife was planning. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. That Idaho's one-party consent law was clear. A person could legally record conversations and activities in their own home without informing other parties. The private investigator Grady recommended had explained this while installing discrete cameras throughout the house. Main living areas only, the investigator said, adjusting a device no larger than a smoke detector. Bedroom and bathroom surveillance would be illegal. But common areas, kitchen, home offices, all fair game. How long before I have footage? Real-time streaming to secure servers. You can access everything from your phone or laptop. He handed Calder a card with login credentials. Video quality is excellent. Audio is crystal clear. Anything that happens in these rooms, you'll have permanent record. The cameras were invisible unless someone knew exactly where to look. Calder tested the system after the investigator left, watching himself move through his own home from multiple angles. The technology felt invasive, but necessary. By Wednesday, the system proved its worth. Jocelyn left for her client meeting at 1:30 p.m. Calder monitored the camera feeds from his office downtown, watching their empty house through his laptop screen, the T215 movement in the kitchen. But it wasn't Jocelyn returning early. A man entered through the back door, moving with casual familiarity. Tall, well-dressed, matching the photo Nina had shown him. Deacon Slade walked through Calder's house like he belonged there, opening the refrigerator, checking his phone, settling onto the living room couch. 20 minutes later, Jocelyn's car pulled into the driveway. The reunion was intimate and comfortable. They embraced like established lovers. No awkward hesitation or guilty glances. Jocelyn poured wine. Deacon kicked off his shoes. They settled onto the couch together, her head on his shoulder, discussing something with animated gestures. Calder watched his wife laugh at another man's jokes in the home they'd built together. Watched her touch his face with the same tenderness she'd once shown her husband. Watched her perform a life that had nothing to do with their marriage or their daughter. The audio was clear enough to catch fragments of conversation. Told him the Peterson project is taking longer. Refinancing should go through by Friday. Passport application was approved. Maisie's documentation is ready. Morocco contact confirmed the arrangements. Calder saved the video files and called Nina. I need those encrypted voice memos decoded today, he said. Already done. You're not going to like what you hear. Send them to me. Better if I come over. This needs context. Nina arrived at his office an hour later, carrying a tablet and looking grim. Before I play these, you need to understand something, she said. Your wife isn't just having an affair. She's been planning this for at least 6 months. Maybe longer. Play them. The first voice memo was dated 3 weeks ago. Jocelyn's voice was clear and determined. Deacon, the timeline needs to accelerate. Calder's getting suspicious about the calls. We need to finalize the trust paperwork and get Maisie's passport processed before he starts asking questions. The second memo was more recent. The refinancing is our last chance to access the house equity. Once that goes through, we'll have enough liquid capital to disappear permanently. The contact in Casablanca confirmed they can expedite the residency application. The third memo made Calder's blood turn cold. I know you think I should tell him about us, but you don't understand Calder like I do. He's not emotional, he's calculating. If he suspects anything, he'll take Maisie and disappear before we can stop him. We have to move first. Nina paused the playback. There are 12 more memos, all planning your daughter's abduction, all discussing how to bypass custody laws and international treaties. Calder stood up, walked to his office window. Below, Boise's afternoon traffic moved in predictable patterns. People going home to families that weren't built on lies. What's the timeline? Based on the voice memos and digital evidence, they're planning to leave the country within 2 weeks. The refinancing was meant to provide immediate cash access. The passport applications are complete. Flight searches show departure dates starting next Monday. Monday's too soon. For them. Or for us. Calder turned back to Nina. For us. I need everything documented and filed before they can disappear. Then we move this weekend. I'll contact Grady and arrange the court filings. Emergency custody hearing, asset freeze, international travel restrictions. What about criminal charges? Attempted parental abduction, financial fraud, possibly more depending on how deep we dig into Slade's background. Nina's expression was hard. Your wife picked the wrong man to conspire with. Deacon Slade has more legal problems than she realizes. That evening, Calder sat on Maisie's bed while she read her chapter book. Normal routine, normal bedtime story, normal goodnight kiss. She had no idea that her mother was planning to steal her away forever. Dad, yes, sweetheart. If you and Mom get divorced, would I still see you? The question was like a knife between his ribs. You'll see me every day. I promise. Good. She settled deeper into her blankets. I don't want to live anywhere else. After she fell asleep, Calder walked downstairs to find Jocelyn in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine. Long day, he asked. Very. The Peterson project is getting more complex. She didn't meet his eyes. I might need to travel next week. Site visit. Where? Denver. Maybe longer if the client wants additional revisions. Another lie. There was no client, no site visit, no project. Just a woman preparing to steal his daughter and disappear to another continent. How long would you be gone? A week, maybe 2. I'll know more after the refinancing goes through. About that. Calder opened the refrigerator, buying time to control his voice. I've decided not to move forward with the refinancing. Jocelyn's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. What? The terms aren't favorable enough to justify the costs. We discussed this. The savings are significant. I ran the numbers again. We're better off keeping our current mortgage. Her face flushed red. You can't just make unilateral decisions about our finances. I'm not. I'm making informed decisions based on careful analysis. He met her eyes directly, the same way I handle all structural problems. They stared at each other across the kitchen island. Jocelyn's mask slipped slightly, revealing something harder underneath. This is our house, Calder. Our investment. Our future. Yes, it is. She set down her wine glass and walked upstairs without another word. Calder stayed in the kitchen, listening to her footsteps overhead. Tomorrow, Nina would provide Grady with complete documentation. Tomorrow, the legal machinery would begin moving. Tonight was the last night his family would sleep under the same roof, pretending to be something they weren't. Friday morning arrived gray and cold, with early October frost coating their windows. Jocelyn moved through her routine with visible tension, checking her phone constantly, making hush calls from her office. The refinancing appointment was scheduled for 2 p.m. Without Calder's signature, the deal would collapse, and with it, her access to immediate funds. I'll meet you at the bank, she said over breakfast, not quite meeting his eyes. Actually, I can't make it, Calder replied. Emergency consultation with the Morrison client. Reschedule it. Bridge safety doesn't wait for convenient timing. Maisie looked up from her cereal, sensing the tension crackling between her parents. When will you be able to sign? Jocelyn's voice was carefully controlled. Monday, maybe. Depends how long the consultation takes. The rate lock expires Monday. Then we'll get a new rate. Jocelyn's jaw tightened, but she said nothing more. After she left for the bank, Calder called Nina. They're meeting tonight, he said. Hotel downtown. Nina confirmed they booked a room at the Grove. Perfect. I've already compromised the hotel's Wi-Fi network. We'll have access to their communications, call logs, even room service orders. Nina's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. Grady's standing by with the court filings. Soon as we have evidence of their final planning meeting, we move. What about Maisie? Margot's expecting her for a sleepover. Pizza and movies, as far as your daughter knows. Calder hung up and called his neighbor. Margot, it's Calder. Would you mind if Maisie spent the night at your house? I have some work emergencies to handle. Of course. She's always welcome. Should I pick her up from school? I'll drop her off around 6. Thank you. Everything all right, dear? Calder paused. Margot had lived in the neighborhood for 15 years, had probably seen enough domestic drama to recognize the warning signs. It will be, he said finally, t 5:30 p.m. Calder knocked on Margot's door with Maisie's overnight bag. Pizza night. Maisie hugged their neighbor enthusiastically. Margot returned the embrace with genuine warmth. We'll have a wonderful time, Margot assured him. Don't worry about pickup time. Whenever you're ready. Thank you. This means more than you know. Margot studied his face carefully. If you need anything at all, you call me immediately. By 7 p.m., Calder was parked across from the Grove Hotel, watching Nina monitor multiple laptop screens from the passenger seat. They're in room 412, she said. Slade checked in an hour ago. Your wife arrived 20 minutes after. What are they discussing? Give me a minute. Nina's fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing the hotel's internal network. Got it. Conference call with someone in Morocco. Banking details, flight arrangements, custody documentation. Can you record it? Already am. Nina turned one of the screens toward him. Real-time transcription scrolled across the display as Jocelyn's voice filled the car through tiny speakers. The passport applications were approved. We can leave as early as Sunday. A man's voice, presumably from Morocco. The account transfer must be completed first. We cannot process residence applications without proof of funds. Deacon's voice. The refinancing fell through. Her husband blocked it. Then we proceed without additional capital. Jocelyn said, I have enough in my business accounts to cover initial expenses. What about the child? Maisie doesn't suspect anything. I'll tell her we're going on vacation. By the time anyone realizes we're gone, we'll be outside U.S. jurisdiction. Calder's hands clenched into fists. Nina reached over and touched his arm. Stay calm. This is evidence. This is what destroys her. The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, covering flight details, documentation, contingency plans. When it ended, Nina had recorded everything. That's attempted kidnapping, she said. Conspiracy to commit international child abduction. Flight to avoid prosecution. She closed the laptop. Tom called Grady. The courthouse steps were cold and empty at 9 p.m., but Judge Harrison had agreed to an emergency hearing. Grady met them in the parking lot, carrying a briefcase thick with documentation. Everything's prepared, he said. Emergency custody order, asset freeze, international travel restriction, restraining order. Once the judge reviews this evidence, your wife won't be able to take Maisie to the grocery store without supervision. The hearing lasted 45 minutes. Judge Harrison reviewed Nina's digital evidence, listened to the voice recordings, examined the financial transfers and travel preparations. This is substantial evidence of planned parental abduction, she said finally. I'm granting emergency sole custody to the father, freezing all marital assets, and issuing a restraining order preventing the mother from removing the child from Ada County. She signed the orders with quick, efficient strokes. These are effective immediately. Local law enforcement will be notified. If Mrs. Wyatt attempts to leave the state with the child, she'll be arrested. Calder felt something release in his chest, not relief exactly, but the satisfaction of a structure holding under pressure. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Wyatt. The judge looked at him over her glasses. This is an extreme situation requiring extreme measures. But you've built a compelling case. Your daughter is fortunate to have a father willing to protect her so thoroughly. Outside the courthouse, Nina handed him copies of all the digital evidence. Everything's documented and legally obtained, she said. Court admissible, properly authenticated, unalterable. What happens now? Now you go home and wait for your wife to walk into the trap she built for herself. Calder drove through Boise's quiet streets, court orders on the passenger seat beside him. At 11:30 p.m., he parked in his driveway and walked through the front door of his house. Jocelyn was waiting in the living room, suitcases packed beside her chair. We need to talk, she said. Jocelyn sat perfectly still in the living room chair, hands folded in her lap like she was attending a business meeting. 2 suitcases stood beside her, one large, one small. Maisie's clothes, Calder realized. She'd already packed their daughter's belongings. "You want to sit down?" Calder said, echoing her words. "I prefer to stand." He set his briefcase on the coffee table between them and opened it slowly. Inside were the court orders, the printed emails, the voice memo transcriptions, the surveillance photos. 9 months of deception laid out in black and white. "I know about Deacon," he said quietly. That Jocelyn's face didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. The calculation of someone reassessing their position. "I know about Morocco, the passport applications, the refinancing scheme." He placed the first document on the table. "I know about the bank accounts you tried to open in Maisie's name." "Calder, I know about the voice memos you recorded, planning to kidnap our daughter." He set down the transcription pages. "I know about the hotel meeting tonight, where you finalized travel arrangements." Now her composure cracked. Color drained from her face as she recognized the exact words she'd spoken 2 hours ago. "How did you—" "Sit down, Jocelyn." She remained standing, but her confidence was disintegrating. "This is some kind of mistake. Whatever you think you heard. I have recordings." Calder opened his laptop and pressed play. Jocelyn's voice filled their living room. "I'll tell her we're going on vacation. By the time anyone realizes we're gone, we'll be outside U.S. jurisdiction." The blood left her face entirely. 12 hours ago, you were planning to steal my daughter and disappear to another continent," Calder continued. "Tonight, you packed her suitcase without telling her she'd never see her father again." "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." He placed the surveillance photos on the table. Images of Deacon in their house, in their bedroom, sitting on their couch. "You brought him into our home. Into our daughter's home." Jocelyn stared at the evidence like she was seeing her own death warrant. "You can try to explain," Calder said. "You can try to justify it, or minimize it, or blame me for driving you to it. But explanations don't matter anymore." He placed the court orders on top of everything else. Emergency sole custody, effective immediately. Asset freeze on all marital accounts. International travel restriction. Restraining order preventing you from taking Maisie out of Ada County. She grabbed the papers with shaking hands, scanning the legal language. "You can't do this. I'm her mother. You're a kidnapper." The court agrees. "This is insane. You're being vindictive, and I'm being protective." Calder's voice remained level, controlled. "Our daughter was 12 hours away from disappearing forever. I prevented that." Jocelyn collapsed into the chair, court orders scattered in her lap. "Where is she?" "Safe. Somewhere you can't reach her." "I want to see her. Supervised visitation only. 1 hour, twice a week, with a court-appointed monitor present." The reality was settling in now. Jocelyn looked around their living room like she was seeing it for the first time, the family photos, Maisie's art projects on the refrigerator, the life she'd been planning to abandon. "This is our home," she said weakly. "No, this is my home. You're a guest here, and not a welcome one. I never meant for things to go this far. You researched non-extradition countries. You forged bank documents. You recorded voice memos about evading U.S. law enforcement." Calder closed the laptop. How much further could it go? Tears started running down her face, but they looked more like frustration than genuine remorse. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. This marriage, this life, it's suffocating. So you decided to suffocate our daughter instead. I would never hurt Maisie. You were going to steal her from her father and take her to a country where she'd never see him again. If that's not hurting her, what is?" Jocelyn had no answer for that. "You have until tomorrow morning to pack your personal belongings," Calder said. "After that, you're trespassing. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore." She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara across her cheeks. "What about counseling? Marriage therapy? We could work through this." "There's nothing to work through. You chose another man. You chose another life. You chose to commit felonies against our daughter." Calder stood up. "Those weren't relationship problems. Those were character problems. I made mistakes. You made choices. Deliberate, calculated choices over many months." He gathered the evidence back into his briefcase. "The only mistake was trusting you longer than I should have." Jocelyn sat in the chair, surrounded by packed suitcases and legal documents, looking smaller than he'd ever seen her. "I loved you once," she said quietly. "I know. I loved you too." Calder walked toward the stairs. "But love without integrity is just emotional manipulation." "Calder, please." He stopped on the bottom step. "You can call Grady's office to arrange supervised visits with Maisie. All other communication goes through lawyers." "Don't do this. Don't destroy our family." "I'm not destroying our family. I'm protecting what's left of it." He climbed the stairs without looking back, leaving her alone with the consequences of her choices. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following Wednesday, giving Jocelyn's attorney 4 days to prepare a defense against overwhelming evidence. Calder arrived at the courthouse with Grady and Nina, carrying additional documentation they compiled over the weekend. Jocelyn sat at the opposite table with a lawyer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Her face was pale, her hands shaking slightly as she reviewed papers that clearly contained nothing helpful to her case. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Harrison." Judge Harrison entered with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every possible variation of human selfishness and stupidity. "This is a custody modification hearing in the matter of Wyatt versus Wyatt," she announced. "Mr. Grady, you may present your case." Grady stood and delivered a methodical destruction of Jocelyn's character and fitness as a parent. He presented the voice recordings, the financial evidence, the travel documentation, the surveillance footage. Each piece of evidence built on the last, creating an inescapable picture of planned child abduction. "Your Honor, Mrs. Wyatt wasn't planning a vacation or a temporary relocation. She was planning to permanently remove the child from United States jurisdiction, specifically to avoid custody laws and prevent the father from any future contact." Jocelyn's attorney rose for his response. "Your Honor, my client made some poor personal choices, but she's never harmed the child or demonstrated unfitness as a mother. These actions, while misguided, stem from unhappiness in her marriage, not malice toward her daughter." "Misguided?" Judge Harrison looked up from the evidence file. "Your client researched countries without extradition treaties. She forged financial documents. She recorded detailed plans to evade U.S. law enforcement. This isn't marital unhappiness. This is criminal conspiracy." The attorney tried another approach. "Mrs. Wyatt is willing to undergo counseling, anger management, whatever the court deems appropriate. She wants to maintain a relationship with her daughter." "Mrs. Wyatt," Judge Harrison addressed Jocelyn directly, "do you understand that your actions constitute attempted kidnapping under Idaho law?" Jocelyn stood shakily. "I was confused, Your Honor. The affair clouded my judgment. I never intended to permanently separate Maisie from her father." Judge Harrison consulted the voice memo transcripts. Quote, "By the time anyone realizes we're gone, we'll be outside U.S. jurisdiction. How do you reconcile that statement with your claim of temporary intentions?" Jocelyn had no answer. "I've reviewed all evidence presented," Judge Harrison continued. "Mrs. Wyatt's actions demonstrate clear intent to permanently remove the child from her father's custody through illegal means. This represents an extreme flight risk and complete disregard for the child's best interests. She signed a custody modification with firm strokes. Sole legal and physical custody is awarded to Mr. Wyatt. Mrs. Wyatt is granted supervised visitation only 2 hours per week with court-appointed supervision. Mrs. Wyatt is prohibited from having overnight visits, from taking the child outside Ada County, and from discussing relocation or travel plans with the child." Jocelyn's attorney requested a moment to confer with his client. They whispered urgently at their table while Calder sat silently beside Grady. "Your Honor," the attorney said finally, "we'd like to request modification of the visitation schedule. 2 hours per week seems. Counsel, your client was planning international child abduction. She's fortunate to receive any visitation rights." Judge Harrison's voice was ice. "This order stands as written." Outside the courthouse, Jocelyn caught up with Calder on the steps. 2 hours a week. Her voice cracked. "She's my daughter, too." "She was your daughter when you planned to kidnap her," Calder replied. You gave up the right to equal parenting when you chose crime over custody. This is vindictive. You're punishing me. I'm protecting Maisie. From you. He met her eyes directly. If you'd succeeded, our daughter would be living in Morocco right now, speaking a language she doesn't know, attending school she's never seen, wondering why her father abandoned her. Jocelyn had no response to that truth. The supervised visits are a gift you don't deserve, Calder continued. Use them to rebuild some kind of relationship with your daughter. Or don't. But don't blame me for consequences you chose. That evening, Calder picked up Maisie from Margot's house. She ran to him with the enthusiasm of a child who'd been separated from her primary caregiver for too long. Dad, I missed you. I missed you too, sweetheart. He held her tight, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. How was your sleepover? Fun. Margot taught me to make cookies. Where's Mom? The question he'd been dreading. Your mom had to go away for a while. It's just you and me now. Maisie's face fell slightly. Is she coming back? You'll see her sometimes. But she won't be living with us anymore. Are you getting divorced? Children always cut straight to the truth. Adults try to soften. Yes, but that doesn't change how much I love you or how much she loves you. It just means we can't all live together anymore. Maisie processed this with a resilience that never ceased to amaze him. Will we stay in our house? For now, but we might move somewhere new eventually. Somewhere with mountains and rivers. Would you like that? As long as you're there. I'll always be there. Nina called on Thursday morning with news that would complete Jocelyn's destruction. Remember how I said Deacon Slade had sealed arrest records? She said without preamble. I kept digging. Found some interesting financial patterns. What kind of patterns? His luxury car business is a front. Real money comes from real estate investment scams. He targets divorced women with substantial assets, gains their trust, then manipulates them into questionable investments. Calder felt a cold satisfaction settling in his chest. How many women? At least 6 over the past 3 years. All divorced, all financially comfortable, all left with significant losses after trusting him with their money. Nina's voice carried professional detachment. But here's the interesting part. Your wife's business accounts show transfers to 3 shell companies Slade controls. She wasn't just having an affair. She was being swindled. How much? $47,000 over the past 6 months. Money she thought was going toward their new life in Morocco. What happened to it? Slade's gambling debts in Las Vegas. Your wife funded his poker addiction while he convinced her they were building a future together. The irony was almost beautiful. Jocelyn had destroyed her marriage for a man who was stealing from her. There's more, Nina continued. FBI has been investigating Slade's network for months. Wire fraud, tax evasion, interstate scam operations. They just needed one more victim to cooperate. Jocelyn, anonymous tip led them to your wife's financial records. Her name appears on corporate documents for 2 of Slade's shell companies. She's now a person of interest in federal fraud investigation. Calder set down his coffee cup. She signed legal documents without knowing what they were. Looks like it. Slade convinced her she was investing in legitimate Moroccan real estate. Actually, she was helping him launder gambling proceeds through fake property development companies. Within hours, the consequences cascaded. Federal agents arrested Deacon Slade at his auto detailing business, seizing computers, financial records, and client lists. Local news covered the story, describing a multi-state fraud operation targeting vulnerable women. Jocelyn's name appeared in court documents as both victim and unwitting accomplice. Her consulting business was flagged for IRS audit. Her professional certifications came under review. Her reputation in Boise's small business community disintegrated overnight. She called Calder that evening, voice shaking with desperation. I didn't know, she said. I had no idea what he was doing. I believe you. And he did. Jocelyn was manipulative, not criminal. Deacon had exploited her weaknesses just as she'd exploited their marriage. Can you help me? Talk to the FBI. Explain that I was deceived. No, please, Calder. I'm facing federal charges. My career is ruined. My family won't even take my calls. You made choices. This is where they led. I was stupid and selfish, but I don't deserve this. You were planning to kidnap our daughter and disappear to another continent. What exactly do you think you deserve? Silence on the other end of the line. You chose Deacon over our family, Calder continued. You chose crime over custody. You chose deception over honesty. These aren't random punishments. They're logical consequences. I can't go to prison. You should have considered that before committing federal crimes. What about Maisie? She needs her mother. Maisie needs stability, honesty, and protection. You've proven you can't provide any of those things. Jocelyn was crying now, but Calder felt no sympathy. She'd been willing to destroy their daughter's life for personal gratification. Now she was experiencing the destruction she'd planned to inflict on others. I'll cooperate with the FBI, she said desperately. Testify against Deacon. Whatever they need. That's between you and federal prosecutors. Will you consider reconciliation if I get through this? The question almost made him laugh. Jocelyn, you recorded voice memos about evading law enforcement to keep our daughter away from me permanently. What part of that suggests reconciliation potential? She had no answer. Don't call this number again, Calder said. All communication goes through lawyers. He hung up and blocked her number. 6 months later, the legal machinery had ground Jocelyn's life into powder. Federal prosecutors offered her probation in exchange for testimony against Deacon's fraud network, but the damage was irreversible. Her business license was revoked. Her professional reputation was destroyed. Her family had distanced themselves to avoid the scandal. She moved to Portland, Oregon, alone and nearly broke, working as a freelance graphic designer under her maiden name. Calder received the final divorce decree on a Tuesday morning in March. Sole custody confirmed. Asset division finalized. All ties legally severed except for the supervised visitation rights Jocelyn rarely used. How do you feel? Grady asked when they signed the last documents. Like an engineer who identified a structural failure before the building collapsed. That afternoon, Calder picked up Maisie from school and drove her to their favorite ice cream shop. Are we celebrating something? She asked, studying his face with the intuition that made her seem older than 9. New beginnings, he said. How would you feel about moving somewhere new? Somewhere with mountains and rivers and clean air. Just us. Just us. Maisie smiled for the first time in months. I'd like that. Good. Because I found us a house in Bend, Oregon. We can see the Cascade from the kitchen window. When do we move? This summer. After school ends. She clapped her hands together. Can I have my own room? You can have whatever you want, sweetheart. We're starting fresh. The house in Bend sat on 2 acres of ponderosa pine and mountain mahogany, with the Cascade Range rising like cathedral spires beyond the back deck. Calder had designed the renovation himself, open floor plan, natural materials, clean lines that emphasized function over decoration. It's perfect, Maisie declared on their first day, running through empty rooms that echoed with possibility. Your room is upstairs, Calder said. Corner windows, view of the mountains. What about your room? Main floor. I wanted you to have the best view. They spent the summer transforming the house into a home. Calder built Maisie a tree house in the largest pine, complete with rope ladder and telescope for stargazing. They planted a garden together, learning which vegetables grew best at high elevation. They hiked trails that led to alpine lakes and meadows full of wildflowers. Slowly, the tension left Maisie's shoulders. Her laugh returned. Her artwork shifted from dark, chaotic scribbles to bright landscapes featuring mountains and trees and happy stick figures. I like it here, she told him one evening as they watched sunset paint the mountains gold. It feels safe. It is safe, he assured her. Nobody can hurt us here. The supervised visits with Jocelyn dwindled to monthly, then quarterly, then stopped entirely. Maisie seemed relieved rather than disappointed. I think Mom forgot about me, she said matter-of-factly during one of their mountain hikes. I think she's dealing with her own problems, Calder replied carefully. That doesn't mean she doesn't love you, but it doesn't mean she does either. The wisdom of children could be devastating. Nina visited in September, bringing takeout Chinese food and stories from her latest consulting contracts. They sat on the back deck while Maisie played in her treehouse, voices drifting down through pine boughs. You look different, Nina observed, studying his face in the evening light. Different how? Peaceful. Like you're not carrying the weight of other people's lies anymore. Calder considered this. I sleep better now. Don't second-guess every conversation or analyze hidden meanings in everything people say. That's what happens when you eliminate toxic people from your life. Nina raised her beer bottle in a mock toast to quiet victories over loud manipulators. They clinked bottles and drank in comfortable silence. Around them, the mountain evening settled into its rhythm, wind through pine needles, distant bird calls, the sound of Maisie's laughter from above. Any regrets? Nina asked. About the divorce? None. About the way you handled it. Calder thought about this carefully. I could have confronted her earlier. Could have given her chances to explain or reform. But those would have been gifts she didn't deserve, and risks Maisie couldn't afford. You protected your daughter from a woman who was planning to steal her. That's not vindictive, that's parental duty. Sometimes I wonder if Maisie will resent me for keeping her from her mother. Look at her. Nina gestured toward the treehouse, where their daughter was teaching her stuffed animals astronomy using the telescope Calder had built. Does she look like someone suffering from eternal deprivation? Maisie was confident, creative, content. She had friends at her new school, excelled at art and mathematics, spent afternoons building elaborate engineering projects with Legos and wooden blocks. She was becoming the person she was meant to be, without the chaos and deception that had poisoned their previous life. She's better off, Calder admitted. Much better off. And so are you. As if summoned by their conversation, Maisie climbed down from the treehouse and joined them on the deck. Dad, will you help me build a rocket tomorrow? I want to see if we can make it reach the moon. We can try, he said, pulling her into his lap. But the moon's pretty far away. That's okay. We have lots of time. Nina left after dinner, hugging them both goodbye in the driveway. You built something good here, she told Calder quietly. Don't let anyone take it away from you. I won't. That night, after Maisie went to bed, Calder sat on the deck alone, watching stars emerge over the Cascade Peaks. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Jocelyn. I know I'm not supposed to contact you, but I wanted you to know I'm doing better. I'm in counseling, trying to understand how I became someone I don't recognize. I think about Maisie every day. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope someday she might understand that I loved her, even when I made terrible choices. Calder read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. He'd moved beyond anger, beyond bitterness, beyond the need for apologies or explanations. Jocelyn was part of their past now, a lesson learned and filed away. She could rebuild her life however she chose, but it would happen without impacting his daughter's future. 6 months later, when Jocelyn tried calling on Maisie's 10th birthday, Calder let it go to voicemail. When she sent Christmas cards, he threw them away unopened. When she attempted to contact Maisie through social media, he reported the accounts and had them blocked. He'd already legally changed Maisie's last name to match his. As far as the world was concerned, Jocelyn Wyatt had never existed. Some people deserved second chances. Others deserved complete erasure. Calder had learned to tell the difference.